Okay. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from NASCAR.info. I apologize. We've had Goodyear must have made my sound editing this week. I swear. Windows 11, never even once. Yeah, can you guys hear me okay? We're going to start proper here in just a moment. I just want to make sure it's actually working here. I'm going to check it on my end. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from NASCAR.info. I apologize. We've had Okay, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to drop this into the text, and then we'll get started here in just a moment. I apologize. We haven't done the intro. For some reason, my audio thing will not play the audio from it, and it's just not the same without the audio. So I don't want that to be confusing for everyone, and then they shut off. So what we're going to do is we're just going to jump right into it here in just a moment as soon as I drop this in Twitter, and we will go from there. No shortage of things to talk about tonight, and I definitely don't, after this race went as long as it did, I don't want it to take any longer than it already has. So that's the goal here for today. So let's jump into the results. Let me get those pulled up, and we're going to do this. Okay. Unofficial results. Excellent. Let's get the full page. Okay, we're not going to do that. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Whoop, hang on. Okay, we don't need that. Alrighty, it's working. It sounds good. Okay. All right. Excellent. Well, hello, everyone. This is Brock Beard from LastCar.info. Again, apologize that we didn't have the intro here, but we're just now getting started. We're coming at you from the conclusion of whatever on earth we just watched there, the Echo Park Auto Trader 500 at the Texas Motor Speedway, where unofficially, pending the results of post-race inspection, Tyler Reddick now has his third career victory and his first on a non-road course, at least in the Cup Series. Of course, he was very good at the ovals when he was back in the Xfinity Series here. That obviously is a story that's gotten buried by quite a few other controversies, no shortage of which, and we'll certainly talk about that for tonight here. First and foremost, before we go any further into the show tonight, I want to definitely extend my thoughts over to Cody Ware. Very relieved from the reports that we had both from Rick Ware's team and the broadcast here after that scary accident about, I think it was 166 laps into the race. He had a collision with the outside wall, had some difficulty getting out of the car after the incident on pit road there. He climbed out of the car with some difficulty and was quickly attended to. The reports that have come out since then is that apparently he was conscious, no broken bones, and he did complain of an issue with his ankle. They're still evaluating whether or not he's going to be running at Talladega next week. But obviously that's a great news given what was probably the hardest hit that we've seen the next-gen car take this year. I mean, we've seen some other contenders, including Austin Dillon's at Atlanta, Joey Logano's on the backstretch during the duels, a few other candidates along the way, and of course very mindful of Kurt Busch's ongoing absence from the sport here following his concussion at Pocono. Certainly want to send thoughts out to him there. But again, very encouraged by the news on that front that Cody Ware had no broken bones, is concerned about his ankle, and there's going to be further evaluations through the week as to what his status will be at Talladega this next week. So, that being one of many controversies already in the way this particular race played out, obviously, the persistent issues that we've seen with this car really came to a head in this race, to say the very least. Not just the impact that Cody Ware had, featuring, again, how much, how rigorous these cars are, and how much, the driver can absorb in any of these impacts. Obviously, the tire failures that have happened, my goodness. I gotta say, I wasn't as beside myself as much as I thought I was. I think that, but clearly, it's just something, it's just the next logical step from all the problems this particular car has been having this year. It's unfortunate that we didn't see any real difference from Bristol last week and all the tire problems they had there. I guess there's only so much they can do within 1 week, especially going into a track here with, just very different demands on the car. And yes, the only other Cup race we've had on this track have been very, very short sprint races during the All-Star race at the beginning of this year. But unfortunately, I mean, again, this is something that I hope it's not going to be the norm for these remaining races this year. I mean, it's really, I get that NASCAR is in a really difficult position, because I think the particular kinds of problems we're seeing are things that probably can't be figured out in the space of a week or just a few days or anything. And it's especially daunting going into Talladega this weekend, given the fact that race in any car is always so dangerous and so risky and everything. And of course, racing is a dangerous activity. But again, I think we've talked about a lot on this show. Anything that's beyond the pale, anything that's too risky, definitely deserves to get extra focus there. It's a bit frustrating, I mean, for sure. And I know a lot of comparisons have certainly been drawn up. I'm seeing it already in the chat here about Indianapolis back in 2008, where they had to have scheduled cautions because the tires just wouldn't last after, a certain number of laps. It certainly kind of devolved into that. Also very much like the 2005 races at Charlotte with the levigated track surface that ended up being so abrasive on tires that you had a lot of drivers blowing tires, especially up front. And then on top of that, you have, now admittedly something that NASCAR could not have really any control over, this extreme heat, this unbelievable heat, the hottest race at Texas for a Cup Series points race. Kind of made me think back to 1993 at Talladega, where you have those terrible accidents, Jimmy Horton and Stanley Smith. Smith ends up very seriously injured at that. Neil Bonnet, his car flew into the catch fence at that point, and that was a very hot race at the same time, too. I'm not sure. I mean, I guess it was one positive thing that you actually had that lightning break with 114 laps to go, that the drivers were able to get out of the cars and at least mitigate some of the issues. I think we would have seen some real exhaustion on the part of these drivers at the end of the race here had there not been that break midway through there. Then again, I know NASCAR has added these features here with trying to improve air circulation in the cars. But how well has that performed in this same sense? It's unfortunate. It's really disappointing. I don't think it feels like, hardly anybody's left this race certainly happy about it. It's most definitely stirred up ongoing debates about what the future of Texas Motor Speedway is. Obviously, after all the craziness that we had in Bristol last week, I know that there was a consensus coming into this one. It's like, well, do we have to do Texas? It's like, why is this one coming up? It's just, nobody's coming out of this one very good. I think my biggest thing is I'm just relieved that there wasn't anything more serious that happened in this race. Cody Ware's accident, I don't want to overstate this, was pretty frightening. And especially bringing things full circle to Mark Martin's accident in Michigan, thankful that there was that change to the walls at the garage entrances there, where there's now like barriers going at a 90-degree angle. But still, if you have a car hitting that point, that could be a problem. Maybe that's something else that they could look at going forward, is maybe either rounding off that point or, creating some other kind of, design there that can maybe help in those situations. One thing that seemed really noticeable in this race, even from the early laps, was how often the NASCAR officials had to warn people on pit road to watch for cars that were kind of skating down pit road. In some cases, like Martin Truex Jr.'s incident at the very beginning of the race, it turned out to be a situation where thankfully he wasn't that too close to the cars. But obviously in the case of Cody Ware's, it was one that it could have been, certainly more serious in that sense. I don't know if that's something particular to the Texas track, where the trajectory, if you're having a problem in turns 3 and 4, it kind of throws you onto pit road a lot quicker than maybe another track like Charlotte or Atlanta that has a similar quad oval configuration. It seemed like that was a big issue throughout the race, even before all of that happened. I don't know. I got to admit, folks, I'm kind of at a loss on this one. And this is not even really broaching the subject of the William Byron and Denny Hamlin thing, which I think opens another can of worms about it. I think another thing, particularly to me, that I found disappointing, and again, it's something I hammer on all these shows, is it was another example of these broadcasts not being up to task when something serious or something controversial or something just outright outrageous happens. I thought between both the broadcast booth and the production crew, neither of them left this race particularly well. I thought it was a terrible broadcast for both of them. I didn't like that the broadcasters were basically kind of laughing at parts of this, or, kind of returning to where they were at Indianapolis last year, where they're kind of remarking at some of these things like, wow, we've seen just a little bit of everything. Or Rick Allen at one point saying, it's surprising, it's unbelievable that the leader, when Truex at the time had a flat tire. Somebody else was tweeting that online. I retweeted it because it hit it right on the head. It's like, no, it's not unbelievable. This has been happening this entire race. This inability to create storylines. If there was a storyline built up about this car this entire year, none of this should have been surprising. And it would have been another great opportunity to feature other things that maybe NASCAR has done to improve this car. But once again, this broadcast also, on top of everything else, included yet another feature on these cars that we heard nothing about this entire year. Did any of you guys know? I mean, maybe I'm just kind of, maybe I'm popping off here, but I mean, like, did you guys, know about this whole hydraulic system that was used in place of the spring rubbers to increase and decrease the spring rate there? That was certainly the first I've seen of it. But that was news to me. It's like, why, once again, are we still in a position that we're still learning about these cars, and at the same time just seeing them fail in the same way over and over again? And they're just like, wow, that was really, I mean, I'm sure the broadcasters, they want to see this race and just say like, well, this is just kind of wild. Isn't this crazy that all this stuff is happening? But it's like, okay, well, how about we try to understand what exactly is happening? Let's try to understand what NASCAR is doing to make this any better. And, is this a Goodyear problem? Is this a NASCAR problem? And I'm tipping my hand here. What really did upset me was at one point, Steve Letarte is saying, like, he doesn't want people, like, expressing opinions about this. Like, more or less, I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but there was one point that he said, like, if it's very different to address this when you're on pit road versus, like, Sunday night or Monday morning, being a Monday morning quarterback, basically, and kind of breaking down what happened here. I think, honestly, that revealed to me a massive, like, not so much the words of what he's saying, because I get that social media is a toxic thing, that people can too often kind of, piggyback on something, mob mentality takes over, and a story that maybe could be easily understood or could be easily explained just ends up going way wide of the mark. I agree with that part of it, but the problem is this is being said by somebody that's in the booth, somebody that has a history with these teams, with these drivers, that you could talk to these people, that you could work with your pit reporters and try to get to the bottom of what is actually happening. It's like, no wonder that you get unfocused debates about what could be done better and what's happening and all that. When you don't get that information, when they're not giving it to you, it's like, well, look, you can shake your finger at people about speculating, but you better be getting us the story and setting the record straight. That's their job. Why aren't they doing their job? Like, and I get it. Like, now this is where maybe we really, again, need to understand this. How much of this is a conscious decision, and how much of this is what they're being told to say at the same time? Now, if that's happening, well, then that requires a different discussion. I'd like to understand this, but I really got the sense that there was just, once again, this real disjoint there. And it was disappointing because, again, much like, again, with even to an extent, like Dale Jr. and Brad Daugherty were doing that too, which was a little disappointing because I think they're usually pretty candid. And even when the race was getting to like the most ridiculous point where, in the later stages, it seemed like there was going to be less issues with tires. And then the later stages, it's still a problem and they just don't know what to say. It's like, well, okay, if you don't, like, I get that the audience doesn't know what to say, but you guys are there. Like, just do some digging and try to figure it out. I mean, maybe that's easier said than done, but I just felt like we were just kind of adrift through this entire thing. And there's really no excuse for it. I mean, it's, for one thing, we're well towards the end of the season and we're well into NBC and USA's portion of the season. There should be more curiosity. There should be more, just attention paid to this. And then the other aspect of it, of course, it's two parts of the whole, like I described in the video a while back. It's also the production staff. How many of these incidents today had terrible camera views, or they just missed what was happening when NASCAR just a couple weeks ago had cameras on board everyone in the field? Why was it so much later that they were showing the onboard camera for William Byron's car and during the Denny Hamlin situation? Or, what happened with Cody Ware's accident to express what was happening there, or any of these other drivers. You have this tremendous asset there, and it's just not being used. Then you get down to the end of the race here, and you have a situation where even then, when Rick Allen's trying to do a call to the finish of the race and saying, well, one of the things that's really entertaining is listening to the radio and how drivers and crew chiefs talk to each other. And one of the best ones that's really interesting to talk to is Tyler Reddick and his crew chief. And meanwhile, it's 2 laps to go. It's well, how about rather than doing that, how about you, I don't know, play the audio of that, communication between driver and crew. You know what the most interesting part of a communication between driver and crew is? Maybe when they're about to win the race. How about that? I think that's the problem. I think this race here in particular it wasn't, I expected it to be as infuriating. I was kind of wondering, it wasn't nearly as physically infuriating as that Atlanta race for the Xfinity series this year with the shake and bake girls and the truck getting stuck in the tunnel. It wasn't quite to that point. It was more of just a complete log jam of just so many things. It's hard to kind of latch on to one thing there. And again, I don't know what Steve Letarte was talking about, where he just didn't want, kind of dissuading people from expressing opinions about this. Of course they're going to. And if you want, at least people are going to be expressing opinions one way or the other, but the job of making sure that those are informed opinions is from the people that are there. You got to have firsthand knowledge. You're there. You're seeing it yourself. You have all the resources at your disposal. You can, at a click of a button, you could listen to the radio from this one team and all that. And I get it. Not any one person is able to catch everything that's happening at the same time. But if you purposefully have people focusing on just the right aspects of there, you're going to get the story. Maybe you don't get the story, but maybe the pit reporter gets the story, or maybe the folks down over, Brad Daugherty and the folks down there in the pit box down there get the story. But everybody's kind of working at the same time. It's where I really bristle at this kind of reaction video aspect of this. And I think this was a race. Where was the moment from the 2005 United States Grand Prix where the guy was on there's interviews with people around there and they're just saying look, this is BS. Why are we doing this? It's this is ridiculous. This is a failure of this or that. And at least start having that conversation going, and because you're there. You're witnessing. I know in sports media, it's a little bit different when you're witnessing an event that's within a controlled space versus, somebody covering a breaking news story where it's kind of developing along the way. It's a little different there, to say the least. But, you still have I think that's even less of an excuse to not use everything that's at your disposal. You're in a closed universe, and you can kind of get all this together. And I just felt they were just kind of a step behind. And I kind of left us dangling a little bit, too, on the production side of it. Again, yeah, they missed a lot of these incidents, and they were reliant on these terrible camera angles, some of them very low resolution, where they just kind of get a little bit of a beginning or an end of it, and then just didn't use the onboard cameras. I don't know if this is so much of a case of them having too many things at their disposal, and maybe they kind of need to narrow things down a little bit, or if it's a case of them not knowing what they have at their disposal, and it's oh shoot, maybe they need to be informed or kind of updated that way. But something needs to change there. I think that the race itself was just a microcosm of, I think, a lot of things that do need to be changed in the sport. If you had a broadcast that was a bit more open with their opinions, or perhaps, again, to give them the benefit of the doubt, or perhaps were allowed to be more open with their opinions, when, what was it? Derek Daly what was it? Who was the person that said Paul Tracy just did the dumbest thing he's ever seen he's done? When's the last time we've seen that in one of these NASCAR broadcasts? particularly on the NBC USA side. I think in Fox, they loosen up a little bit because Mike Joy in particular, I think he tends to call a spade pretty clearly, but we're just not seeing that so much over here. And I'm worried that, again, if it's a situation where they're not able to express themselves, that's one problem. If it's one where they're consciously deciding not to express themselves that way, that's another problem. I guess it's really up to, I guess we're not really going to get a clear idea about this. I mean, we're going to have them try to understand themselves there too. Just unfortunate. This was a race where if things are completely flying off the handle, if things are just completely coming apart, there needs to be some recognition of it. You can't just go on and do it the same way that you've always done and just be like, wow, that was incredible. Oh, that was amazing. Oh, isn't that unusual? It's like, no. Take a little bit of a step back here. That's where I hammer on it entirely too much, but that's because it's important. A storyline-based approach to broadcasting is absolutely critical. Not just positive stories too. There could be negative stories at the same time. It could be entirely different. But it's important. They're both equally important stories, that you need to be able to understand them. Because when you don't do that, this is what you get. And I think a lot of the same reactions that we're probably going to see from people is probably going to depend on where they are on that spectrum. If you just kind of, view from the standpoint of like, wow, that was a crazy race. Let's look at all the crashes and talk about how it's like, which crash did you like? Did you like the one where Truex wrecked? Or did you like the second one where Christopher Bell wrecked? It's like, or is it going to be something else where we're going to say, well, look, I didn't like how this happened. Let's try to come up with solutions here. I think there's a problem here where being critical of something is viewed too much as like, oh, why are you watching? It's like, oh, you're being too negative on it. You just don't like it. It's like, no. A lot of people that criticize things openly is because they care very deeply about it. And yes, sometimes in some cases too much, and that's definitely gone too far in other cases. But I think that was really the big takeaway from this race. And it's unfortunate because I feel like it's still not going to get addressed. I think what's happening, what probably is going to go on with these cars is NASCAR is going to try to come up with some kind of a patch to at least get through these last couple of races. And then over the offseason, hopefully just, completely change this, kind of take all the notes they can get and hear from these other teams and figure out a way to get everything fixed. Figure out a way to make the toe link stronger. Figure out a way to make sure that the car doesn't, completely lose its handle just because the under tray or the diffuser gets damaged. Try to find a way where, it can handle some of these tracks better. Any number of these issues, and probably plenty more issues. These are just the ones we're hearing about or ones that we're seeing. There's probably a whole lot of other things going on behind the scenes there too. But they're going to have to come up with some kind of a short-term solution. And it's unfortunate because, in NASCAR's history, sometimes those work out well, sometimes they don't. I still think that the restrictor plate, for example, has always been kind of a temporary solution that became something that was more permanent. I think Kyle Petty was one that was very outspoken on that. Correct me if it wasn't him, it was somebody else. I'm pretty sure it was Kyle that was expressing that. But that was definitely an issue that needed to be addressed. I see the comment here, fix the fires, Andrew Bremner. Exactly. That's another one too. You had a situation where you had a fire in Chase Elliott's car. Yes, after hitting the wall. But again, this is happening after the changes they made after Kevin Harvick's. And yes, it was a consequence of a wreck. Maybe it was different. Maybe it was closer to what happened with Cole Custer's one. But again, see how we're trying to kind of attach things together and try to put them together. That's what you've got to do in crafting a storyline. Okay. And I get that it's different when you're there, but that is so important. It's so important. Not only does it get your viewers to care what's happening, but it keeps them informed. And if you're not getting people interested in what's happening or getting them to care, and you're not getting them informed, then what are you doing? I think, one other thing that I noticed from this broadcast too was, one thing and again, I don't mean to be too critical on Dale Jr. As well here, because I think there's a lot of things he does very well. In this race in particular, he was right on the ball when anybody was having trouble and hitting the wall or even getting knocked out of the groove. He probably could have been, he probably should have had a more direct line to the producers there or whoever was directing the cameras there, because it seemed like he was right on the ball when any of those incidents happened. So that was really good. And it was particularly important in this race. It seemed like Rick Allen was always kind of like a step behind. And I think if they had a different workflow worked out where, you know, you could have Dale Jr. kind of, you know, he kind of fell into kind of this Benny Parsons role, which I think we've talked about a bit before. He's kind of been in that situation where he sees a wreck and he responds to it and he kind of jumps on that. Then have, like, you know, Rick Allen, instead of just repeating what Junior said, which seemed to happen a lot tonight, kind of contextualize it more. And again, build it towards storytelling, build it towards kind of explaining what's happening or remembering what happened earlier in the race and kind of adding to that. I mean, that was absolutely essential in this particular race because you had so many people going back and forth through the field that you had issues that were so similar from one moment to the next. But again, just like with the Truex incident, it was treated like, oh, this is just completely out of nowhere. How on earth did this happen? It's like, no. Like, don't make it so obvious that you're not paying attention. You know, like try to just focus just a little bit more. Like that's so important. And again, I don't want to make this sound like it's more important than the very real safety concerns that are happening. But again, that's the role of people that are working to cover these races, is to bring that information to you. And, you know, again, you know, you can't let social media outflank you, whether it's like doing debates or just bringing the information out there. You have the most assets and the most direct connection. There are places that the TV crews can go that, you know, anybody else that's covering a race can't go into. There's situations where, you know, they get to go there first, or maybe they get the first interview. You know, when the best questions aren't asked and those questions aren't being addressed on TV, you know, that could be another issue. So it's always been a whole lot of small things, but it's all been in service to the larger purpose of, again, storytelling and informing the audience. And this is a race where it was so important. And there should have been an entire notebook on everything that's happened since the beginning of this year. So it's really unfortunate. So, you know, again, and it sounds like it's left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths already, which is unfortunate because somebody's got to win the race. And of course, you know, Tyler Reddick, given all that he's, it's been going on over the Richard Childress team and missing the next round of the playoffs by just a couple points, just a heartbreaker there. Not for lack of trying, not for lack of being one of the breakout stars of this season. There definitely needs to be just as much attention focused on what that accomplishment means too. But that's where that really needs to happen. And it was so important this year. I think this year reminds me a lot of like 2018, where you had Danica Patrick and Dale Earnhardt Jr. retire the previous year. I know Danica made a few starts in 2018, but they were out of the sport full time. And what should have been done in that season was right from the start, really make sure that you know who these other drivers are in the field. Don't make it seem like there's some massive void because you don't have some uber superstar that sells out merchandise 10 times more than anybody else. You have to really bring up who these other drivers are. This was something that, ironically, was handled very well when the IndyCar split happened in 1996. And you had like this different situation where you had the Indy 500, it had some unusual names, but Paul Page knew that was what they needed to do. You didn't have all the big names from CART in there, so he made sure that he was going to say, okay, here's who these guys are. You may not know who they are now, but maybe they'll be your favorite later. Here's who this guy is. Here's who that guy is. There was a recognition of it. And I think where the broadcasting gets even better is where they recognize a need that maybe the audience doesn't even realize they need at the time. So that's what really needed to happen this year. Only this year was different from 2018 because the thing that we needed to understand more was the car. And the car should have been the story the entire year. It should have been like, what we're learning about it and what we're going to understand about it and how did it perform here and what did we learn from it and how did it perform here and what did we learn from it and how it could kind of build that up. So that's kind of a different situation there too. But it's unfortunate. I think that it was more troubling, than anything else. And then certainly on the safety standpoint there from how the car is performing here, I am again relieved that there wasn't anything more serious from what we're seeing, at least from what we're seeing here. I mean, again, I know that's, something you certainly can't take for granted given all the mechanical failures the cars had at Bristol. I mean, Bubba Wallace had the exact same problem with the steering this week that he had last week at Bristol at a completely different track. I mean, was anything able to be learned from last week to make that easier this time around? I'm not sure. I mean, I would think that that was something that the team could look at. But I know that one thing that's also been talked about, and Kevin Harvick has kind of added to this conversation too, of course, is that, look, the teams can figure out these problems. They have the resources to make these cars better. But again, it has to go through NASCAR. And just that one step alone, which I'm sure isn't just one step, makes that process so much slower to introduce anything else. I don't know how many steps it took to do anything. And the problem is, in NASCAR's history, they usually don't really jump on something unless something really, really serious happens. And unfortunately, a lot of drivers, paid the ultimate price for that. Obviously the Hans debate with Dale Earnhardt after what happened in the 2000 season as well. You think about window nets. I mean, everything that's in these cars has some kind of correlation to a decision that wasn't made quick enough. And I know that it's an evolving situation. Some things are and are not anticipated. Some things just can't be anticipated. Some things are just freak things that happen. But if it's a clear trend, if you're watching this particular car perform this entire year, you can't just toss up your hands and say, oh, well, maybe we're going to just wait till November and then we'll kind of figure things out from there. That's kind of the situation. So, I'm hopeful that things will, I don't know. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't like the wait and see approach that I'm sure NASCAR finds themselves in. It's unfortunate. I don't envy them. I'm not saying any of these decisions are easy. I'm saying that these are things that need to certainly be addressed. But I mean, that's easy. I mean, I will admit, to concede to a bit of Steve Letard's point from tonight, it is a bit easier to say it, but people got to say it, for people to actually make any of these changes. And I think that conversation's happening. I think it's been taken a bit more seriously, especially after Kevin Harvick's fire at Darlington. It should have been a little bit earlier, like Chris Buescher's fire, but we're getting there. So it's hard to say. Gosh, I mean, it's a bit exhausting here thinking about it, and I know I'm missing a lot of major issues on this one here too. I guess we could talk about the William Byron and Denny Hamlin thing, because of course officiating also wasn't really taking, didn't really have the best night at all here in this one too. I mean, when you have the onboard cameras, and I guess we talked about this already a little bit about the situation there with William Byron getting in the back of Denny Hamlin. Hamlin spins out. He doesn't get his spot. He's still at the back of the field. Should William Byron have been penalized? Well, in that case, yeah, I think so. Especially if we're talking about a playoff system that they've created where just a couple of points can eliminate somebody from the field. You don't want to create a situation where drivers are going to be actively wrecking each other all the time. I think the unfortunate reality is, and we saw this at Gateway earlier this year, I think it's much more dangerous to do nothing and then encourage that other driver through just not saying anything, that like they're going to go out there and, I'm going to wreck this guy, or I'm going to make sure that he spins out. I mean, it seems to me like it wasn't too long ago that NASCAR really came down hard on that, and they would just kind of park a couple drivers and hold them for a couple laps just to cool down, just to make sure they wouldn't do that. And, holding serve to make sure that things didn't get out of control. I was disappointed by how hands-off NASCAR was when Denny Hamlin was openly threatening to take out Ross Chastain at Gateway for something. It was an accident. It was an accident. Was Chastain over-aggressive in that case? Yes, he was, but they were racing for position. And this point system has only encouraged drivers to race that much more aggressively. That's always been the problem, especially once they put these elimination rounds in there. And they want that drama. They want all that stuff happening. But if you're going to have a situation where, okay, a couple drivers are in there and you got one guy that's in behind the wheel and just seething, just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go out there and get him, then I think that's probably a good time to just stop the both of them. Just not park them for the race. I think that's too much, but definitely a penalty box, which is something that NASCAR is not, it's not unwarranted. It's not like they've never done that before. Jimmy Spencer and Ken Schrader, were wrecking each other at North Wilkesboro in 1994, and both of them got penalized on that, if I remember correctly. Certainly Spencer did. But, in that case, I think, in a case like this where you got a couple of drivers that are just that much at each other's throats, then, maybe you got to step in. You have to have somebody have the authority to just step in and not second guess it. And it's unfortunate, but yeah, and I get it, Rick S. I see your comment on that. Yeah, I mean, you got a situation where you want to have people still in there, and you want them to still mix it up. But that's there's got to be a line somewhere. I think if you're getting to a point where somebody's going to deliberately wreck somebody, I mean, somebody could be very seriously injured. Not to mention the fact of how this car responds in certain kinds of impacts and how much we're still kind of understanding about that. I think this is certainly a point that you don't want to have drivers take each other out. I hope this doesn't come down to how the championships can be settled in Phoenix or the closing stages of some of these other races. I hope it's going to be decided by good, close racing. That you're going to have people that actually kind of go in there and maybe they're really motivated to just beat them. Not wreck them, but actually beat them. You want to get up there and run your fastest laps. Elevate it. Bring people up, not down. That they're just going to be, they want to become more excellent to get up there and beat that guy and really bring out the best. Because they're competitors at the end of the day. But this is not a demolition derby, and it shouldn't be decided that way. Yeah, I would have held both of them. I wouldn't have parked both of them, but I think they should have both been held at least for a lap, maybe two. I don't know. I mean, there were so many cautions in this. They probably would have both got the lap back quick enough anyway, and then right back into it. And then they could have just been, okay, look, we did something. And we also served notice to everybody else in the field that they better not do that stuff because, again, that's what good leadership does. That's what you really need to do. And again, it's easier said than done. Somebody's got to be the adult in the room. Dale Jarrett mentioned this. I think NASCAR Man posted this clip about when they got rid of racing back to the line in 2003. And there was that interview with Dale Jarrett and saying like, well, sometimes these drivers act like children and NASCAR needs to step in and be the parent and say, hey, look, you can't do that anymore. The drivers can police themselves about some things, but sometimes it just gets out of control. And I think with the questions about this car, the consequences of something like that getting out of control, I think are a bit more dire. And so I think it needs to be treated more seriously. So we'll see. I mean, we could just have another bit of chaos next week at Talladega and it's going to go in one ear and out the other. But hopefully not. There's always a balancing act there. You don't want it to be too much of it. The NASCAR, I mean, what brought about the boys have at it thing, I know that gets criticized a lot, but, in 2009, when NASCAR was policing a lot of the ways these drivers were racing too much, everybody just kind of held a single file train through the closing stages of that Talladega race for almost the entire distance. And it was kind of a protest more against, too much of it. But again, too little of it, and you get just this other crazy stuff there too. So it's a matter of finding that balance. Hopefully they get to that point. But again, I know their back's against the wall because I know they just want to think playoffs and they want to think Talladega and they want to think about maybe other non-playoff guys mixing it up and adding more to that. Things that would make great storylines if they were committed a bit more seriously and in that sense. But yeah, I don't know. But just a frustrating situation there with that. It's hard to really take too much from that. Haven't even talked about last place in this race, but I guess really it was kind of a microcosm of everything else that happened too. Kyle Busch, eliminated in an accident very early in the race, was running the high lane, trying to get around Denny Hamlin, bounced off the wall, had like a 180-degree spin and bounced off the wall. I was impressed that they were able to kind of still drive the car and get on pit road and try to figure something out there. But pretty much went to the garage area right after. I mean, there was pretty heavy damage to the right side of that car. I would have been very surprised if they even completed another lap after that. And just another devastating stretch of races for Kyle Busch. I know with these contracts and the way things play out, I know the team's trying to get the best run they can, much like Richard Childress's team did today with Tyler Reddick. I think we saw both sides of the coin of that today. Ironically, with both the teams that are really involved in this bit of movement between the drivers here. I think that's probably one way you could certainly color all of this. Just a shame for Kyle Busch. I mean, he's had just an absolutely disastrous playoffs. Should have won the Southern 500, had the engine fail up there. There's been a lot of talk, Toyota, to their credit, came out this week and talked about how there were things that Kyle Busch was doing in terms of how the engine was revving, but also conceding the fact that the drivetrain wasn't as durable as they expected it would be, and issues along those lines. It's just unfortunate, and I'm sure and just like he said in his interview today, I'm sure he's more excited about 2023 than ever on that. In fact, I put a poll up earlier this week about designing a magnet, the door magnet for the Patreon members there for upcoming coverage at Phoenix. Patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock if you're interested in joining that. But the votes so far seem to indicate they want a Kyle Busch design on there for his last race with M&M's. I assume M&M's is sponsoring him for that last race. It seems like they usually sponsor him for that event, but he'll certainly do so as a non-playoff driver for his last race at Gibbs. So, I'm sure he's counting down the days until he gets to get his key card there to get to Richard Childress Racing and begin to look at what they're going to do for 2023 and beyond. But it's just unfortunate. These playoffs make it even more brutal for drivers that are in kind of contract negotiations, or especially in situations where they're leaving a ride. We talked, I think, last week about situations where drivers would leave before the end of the year to anticipate starting the year off. I mean, Ernie Irvan, they did that documentary just recently on that, about him taking over Robert Yates Racing after Davey Allison died, and then trying to kind of get his feet under him, and how that really helped in 1994 for how strong of a year they had. I mean, unfortunately, his season was cut short for other reasons there, but again, you just don't see that now. And so now you have this stretch run to the end of the year, and you have drivers that are maybe just kind of quietly getting finishes further back in the order, and then unfortunately situations where they're perhaps going to be your last place finishers. In fact, the last 5 consecutive last place finishers in the Cup Series this year have all been past series champions, including Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott, now Kyle Busch and Martin Truex, and and so forth there. So it's really just a difficult situation. Kevin Harvick being the 5th member of that group. Really kind of a crazy situation there for all these drivers. So it's unfortunate that things shake out that way. I think it makes it very difficult. I'll admit, Kyle Busch at this point, for those of you scoring at home, and of course the statistics will be updated later tonight if it turns out that Kyle Busch is your last place finisher. This, of course, pending the results of post-race inspection. If Kyle Busch is your last place finisher, this is going to jump to about 3rd or 4th in the rankings for the NASCAR Cup Series Championship. It's only his 2nd last place run this year. His first was when he was disqualified earlier this year at Pocono. But the leader is still BJ McLeod with his 4 last place runs. And Corey LaJoie actually has more bottom 5s and bottom 10s, I believe, even now, than Kyle Busch, although he still also only has 2 last place runs this year. So mathematically, I mean, is Kyle Busch going to be your NASCAR championship this year? It would stink to have him end that time period at Joe Gibbs Racing with that. I don't know how on earth he'd react if I have to give him a certificate in November, but I can't play favorites. I can't. So I owe that to you guys as the viewers and the readers. We started this tradition a couple years ago. It was a race team that actually suggested it. And it's always a challenge to do it. Presenting it to David Starr last year, he was really cool with it. Although I know he was already looking forward to starting things over with a different team this year as well. But I don't know. But if it ends up turning out that that's going to be the situation, we may have one of those on hand, and that may actually end up being what happens there. But, again, it's just bizarre. I mean, if I didn't have that on my bingo card at the start of this year, I'll tell you what. So that's kind of the way this year's playing out. So full write-up on whatever the last place finisher is for the Cup Series race will be later tonight. The one for the Xfinity race is already up on the lastcar.info. That, of course, being Jeffrey Earnhardt, who had a very big crash on the back straightaway there, which is unfortunate. But it did give a chance to actually kind of highlight some of the good runs he's had this year. Of course, a great run in Nashville earlier for Sam Hunt Racing, and then the pole and the second place finish with Larry McReynolds atop the pit box back at Talladega this year, actually racing against Noah Gragson, who, of course, went on to get his 4th consecutive win on the Xfinity Series side this weekend here as well. And we'll definitely talk about that at the same time here. Noah Gragson, again, congratulations to him. I know one of those races was rain shortened, but you know what? As we talked about during the Kansas show, he had to go up there and take the lead in that particular race. And it wasn't an easy situation. And then, there were other drivers that were up there. A different kind of crash fest that we saw in the Xfinity race yesterday, this one being much more multi-car pileups. And again, kind of a situation where after the bottom five was settled, seeing a lot of drivers that were having some good runs that really got eliminated there. John Hunter Nemechek seemed like he had one of the best cars in the field. I know it is the Joe Gibbs Racing team that did win the championship last year, and the John Hunter won the truck race last year at Texas, so probably shouldn't have been as surprising. But it was good to see him back up there. I think that, maybe some people perceive that his effort in the Cup Series with Front Row Motorsports was a step backward. I think it was valuable seat time. And again, maybe if he finds his way back into the Cup Series with the next-gen car, he very nearly was the relief driver for Kurt Busch before Ty Gibbs got the spot. Maybe things could work out better for him, but I think that was certainly a bit of a heartbreaker there. Among the smaller teams, too, Brennan Poole in the number 6 car was just in the wrong place at the wrong time in the back straightaway. Gets involved in that accident and finishes back in the 31st spot. An unfortunate situation there for him. JD Motorsports is certainly a team that can't afford to be tearing up too much of equipment. It's good that at least to balance it out, Bailey Curry was able to come back for the back of the field in a pass-through penalty at the start of the race to finish in the 12th spot. I thought that was a fine showing from him. But two drivers I definitely want to give a shout-out to on this show and also mention in the article. CJ McLaughlin, first of all. This is a guy with very limited starts in the Xfinity Series, runs the SciAps sponsorship there. He's run some races with RSS Racing in the past. He's had some races where he's had terrible luck. He's had ones where, it's kind of like Joe Graff Jr., kind of a driver that's brought in a sponsor here and trying to get his feet under him. I know that people have certain opinions on pay drivers or the perception of them. But really trying to get the best run that they can out there. I still maintain that, motorsports is still a merit-based sport at the end of the day, and that even a driver that, has the biggest budget, the sport's going to cycle somebody out after a while. So if you have a driver in there and they actually have some talent, they can kind of work their way in there, they'll stick around. And CJ McLaughlin is another guy that, even though he started very recently in the series, I think that, he stuck it out in this race and finished one spot behind his teammate Ryan Sieg. The first time that the RSS Racing team has had two cars in the top 10 since Richmond this year, when they had both Parker Retzlaff and Ryan Sieg in that case there. So good job for CJ McLaughlin. Started 35th in the field and finished 10th. Yes, he had to survive a lot of wrecks there in that race, but even then, the last car to finish the race under power was in 21st. So he still had to beat another 11 of those guys that were still out there too. So I think still a meaningful performance on there and a good run there. Retzlaff, unfortunately, not able to have a good run out there. Lost multiple laps after running in the back of one of the other starters out there at the beginning of the race. Really was looking forward to what he could do with Our Motorsports, given the fact that that team did so well with Brett Moffitt before. Unfortunately, Moffitt's now since left the team, as that team's really been struggling. I think particularly with their expansion, we've seen the bad luck that Jeb Burton's had in the 27 car this year. But I think that's another thing that they can kind of really look at going forward. I hope Retzlaff's going to be in the car a lot more. I don't know if he's going to run it at Talladega this week or not. You tend to see some super speedway ringers kind of come into the cycle here and push different drivers out of rides. But we'll find out what happens one way or the other there. But the other driver that really distinguished himself in this, and to their credit, the broadcast did a great job highlighting him. I'll say the Xfinity broadcast was way better than the Cup broadcast, was Nick Sanchez. Great job by him in the Big Machine Racing team. At one point was challenging for what looked to be a top 5 effort. I mean, here's the guy that's leading the ARCA point standings. Him and his teammate Raja Karuth been one of the biggest stories this year in that division. To those who believe that the ARCA series isn't developing talent, I think they definitely had something that they could really chew on from this past week's race with how well Nick Sanchez performed in that event. That 48 team's gone through so much this year. I was very outspoken about them letting Jade Buford go. I really thought that he was having some solid runs. I felt like he could get a real good shot at it because he had a good start in this at the road courses. Distinguished himself at Portland, really trying to kind of get a good run up there. But unfortunately, we haven't seen him since then. A lot of times since then, we've seen Cup drivers in that car. And not just Cup driver. I mean, yes, Tyler Reddick won earlier this year and got a win with that. But also, you've had a lot of Cup drivers that haven't been competitive. Guys like Ricky Stenhouse gets in the car. The Dillon brothers getting in that car and not being able to perform up to the level that we saw with Nick Sanchez in this. Nick, on top of this, pulled a straight-up Days of Thunder move to get through that wreck on the back straightaway. He was like pretty much looked like full throttle coming down the back straightaway there and getting through that. Quite a bit of daring to work through that and finishing 11th at the end of it there. Third car one lap down, but still, I think that's a fine performance. I think his previous best out of these 3 previous starts is like 26th or something. So a fantastic turnaround for him. Stephen Parsons is another guy that's really been turning it on lately. Getting his career best run a few weeks ago, was good at Watkins Glen. Here he's right ahead of his team co-owner Tommy Joe Martins, finishing in the 13th spot there. Again, could be, a situation where you just got to survive a lot of wrecks that happen out there. But he's really capitalizing on that. I mean, Stefan has been so impressive. I feel like we talk about him just about every week on this show here, and certainly very happy to. So a lot of, competitors having good runs. Also, very happy to see Matt Mills back on the entry list. We haven't seen him in a car for a couple weeks as he had complications from the flu. It's good to see him back at the track and himself being able to clear a lot of the wrecks that happened in this one. He actually finished in the 16th spot. So great run for Matt Mills. Good to see him back out there. Hopefully at Talladega this week, if he's still in one of those rides for BJ McLeod, he could perhaps capitalize on the good run he was having at Daytona. He was missing a lot of those big wrecks in the race that Jeremy Clements won. But maybe still get that elusive top 10 there. But we'll see how things shake out on that. And I think he's one that you could certainly look at too. It's unfortunate Kyle Weatherman couldn't avoid the last couple of wrecks there, finishing in the 22nd spot there for Jesse Iwuji Motorsports. I'm glad Jesse Iwuji's keeping him in there and getting some more good runs out there. He qualified 15th. I mean, Weatherman's a fantastic qualifier. I think some of that additional Cup experience he had with Rick Ware's team has helped him really learn how to capitalize with these smaller teams. And, of course, mentioning him in the same breath as Bailey Curry from their past experience at Mike Harmon's effort and their breakout performance in 2020. Heartbreaker for Brandon Brown. They had a great sponsor on board there with Cat Trailer Sales. 68 car ends up involved in one of those wrecks back in the 24th spot. Brandon Jones, your pole sitter, had a car that he saved from a spin in the first corner. Very impressive, especially given how narrow the actual runoff area, the actual apron is at Texas, especially in turns 1 and 2. 27th place finish for him after getting in one of the biggest wrecks there in that particular case. Actually didn't lead any laps. It's kind of surprising even from that moment there, but further back in the lineup. Landon Castle, I still wait for him to actually kind of break through and maybe sneak off one of these wins here, although Noah Gregson's just been so good lately. Maybe Castle can kind of pull it off at Martinsville where he had that runner-up finish earlier this spring. I think that would be one thing that would be really exciting to kind of look forward to. But a lot of big names towards the back of the field here at the same time. Jeremy Clements touched on him a little bit earlier, finishing in the 36th spot with ignition problems. After getting his spot back into the playoffs, it's unfortunate that, again, it's in our situation that's just out of his hands. Just had a mechanical issue there. Perhaps a consequence of the same heat that we've had this weekend, record-breaking heat on the Xfinity Series side as well. I was stunned that we covered that race in 2021 when it was 91 degrees, and to think the fact that this race run at the same time of day, different time of the year, was 4 degrees warmer. I can't even imagine that. That must have just been absolutely sweltering. So a big call and a shout out to the fans in the stands there too. I think there was a pretty good turnout, especially for the Cup race, of course, this weekend, given the very adverse weather conditions there this weekend. So kudos to them there at the same time. But yeah, a lot to kind of look at from there. I kind of want to look back at the Cup results, and I think that's about most of the storylines I wanted to kind of discuss on this. Definitely, if you guys have any other questions to talk about from this weekend's racing here that I haven't talked about yet, we can certainly talk about that as well. We'll do some trivia questions here in just a little bit at the same time. Let's see. Yes, Andrew Bremner. Yeah, the 13 car. That was a gorgeous scheme. It's unfortunate Akinori Ogata didn't have a good run out there with some mechanical issues. But I'm actually a little disappointed that he ran this race because apparently it sounded like he was going to be running Phoenix instead, and I'm going to be covering that one. I'd love to see that car in person. I don't know if he's going to be running that race as well, but we'll find out that too. Oh, Bob Walsh just found out about the road course race. Oh, it's Chicago. The Chicago street course. Yeah, not in Detroit. I don't know, unless something else changed here while we're doing the show, so I'm not sure. So we'll find out. Silent Spades. Hamlin disqualified for contact with Byron. Oh, let me get to the super chats here too before we get into the trivia section here. Thank you so much, Beast of Metal. There, first and foremost, let me get yours on this. This race was a total disaster, which is ironically fitting for a dead track walking. Also, NASCAR was completely irresponsible in not throwing competition cautions in 40-lap intervals, a la Indy 2008. Again, first of all, thank you for the super chat for sure. You know, I think that you're definitely on point about Indy 2008. That was one I was thinking less of during this race here because it seemed like it was just more crashes even than the tire failures there. But clearly, the way it was going, I mean, it was a Goodyear problem. I know Goodyear's going to blame the teams. I know the teams are going to blame the tires at Goodyear, and I know NASCAR is not going to say anything about the fact that they have the lower sidewall and that it's perhaps been an issue at other tracks earlier this year. It's just a mess. It's a mess, and I think we've hit that pretty well in the show here. But it's an unfortunate situation there for these teams. I hope that things kind of get worked out there. But clearly, they can't have this keep happening. I mean, it's already expensive enough for these teams, and they have a limited number of cars. And we can't forget about that. There's a limited number of cars they could keep in their shops per program, and then that's going to be a real problem. And then other things you can look at going further ahead too. So. Yeah, I mean, it's an unfortunate deal there, but I think that's another one to certainly look at. But again, thank you for the super chat, Beast of Metal, for sure. Thank you also to Michael Jensen for yours. Goodyear's tires on multiple occasions this year have been horrible, but with them having the monopoly that NASCAR and the teams want them to have, it won't change. Well, and this is where, and I saw a couple other comments on this too, Michael, and thank you for bringing it up there. The topic of a tire war and the topic of the possibility of other tire brands coming in. Obviously, that monopoly is something that Goodyear is going to be very reluctant to let go of, and they're not even going to concede much space for anybody else getting in there. You think back to the video that NASCAR Man and I did about the tire war with Hoosier back in 1994, or Slap Shoes expanded on it as well with back in the 1988 season as well. There's lots of good coverage on this. You know, it can lead to very similar and frightening outcomes too, where teams are literally trying to compete for making the fastest possible tire. And maybe the fastest tire is going to be a tire that's less strong, or maybe it's going to be a tire that is rushed out and hasn't been properly tested. You don't want, I mean, these teams obviously test equipment for things that get made into production cars or get used along the way. I mean, historically, that's kind of been the case. That's been a part of a lot of forms of racing, really. But in a tire war, unfortunately, it's going to be a situation where, you could have the similar outcome, but, just a situation where now you have multiple different tires having that problem. I don't know what the proper solution is to that. I guess if you could have a tire cold war, perhaps, or maybe it's done over preseason testing, and the NASCAR just puts their foot down and says, okay, we're going to just use this tire this year, and we're just going to work with these guys, and just cut it off like that. Then you don't have the races. You don't have a race on top of it where you're contending with different tire problems and all that. Now, of course, as I say that, I'm thinking like you could have a potential same situation that you've had with the next gen car this year. What if you then have a problem with these tires? You get batch after batch of them here, and then it turns out that they're really terrible for this track or that track, and then you got to come up with another batch of tires, and then you have that problem. Maybe that would be easier. Maybe it would be easier to come up with, I mean, there's different compounds in the Goodyear tires. Maybe that wouldn't be that big of a deal. But, that would be something else that you could kind of, you'd have to kind of anticipate there at the same time. But, I don't think it's going to change with Goodyear. But the problem is complacency. How much of this issue is responsible for, is complacency responsible for the outcomes that we're getting? How much of this has been like this because things have been this way for much longer? Is a different tire brand more suited to this particular kind of car or this particular kind of wheel? I'm not sure. I mean, it's a very good question, Michael. So I think that, it's definitely something that needs to be considered. I know Tony Stewart was very outspoken on Hoosier. Others have brought up different brands at the same time. It's tricky. It's tricky. And when you see a race like this, where it's so directly the result of, having these particular tire problems out there when it's so universally problematic in exactly the same manner. I mean, you got to do something, but when you just have 6 races left to go and you only want to talk about the playoffs, I don't know. I mean, I guess the alternative is NASCAR could try to do something kind of quietly behind the scenes and try a different compound, but I mean, it's the time frame is just working against them at this point, and I don't know. I mean, maybe I don't know. I feel like if I go any further down that road, I'm gonna be speculating too much, and I don't want to do that. I'm sure there's been enough of that already going around, but that'd be another thing to kind of look at too. But yes, again, thank you for the super chat there, Michael, as well. Let's see, get here at the same time. Barbara Smith, thank you for your super chat there too. Appreciate your knowledge. Well, thank you very much, for sure. I mean, again, we all, have different kind of exposure to the sport or different kind of things to look at. But whenever I can bring something unique to it here, I appreciate doing it. And I appreciate, again, the super chat there at the same time there too. So thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy the show tonight and stick around for if you like NASCAR knowledge, you're really going to like our trivia section here that we'll do next at the same time. Let's see. Oh, the field fillers. Yes. Oh, I guess I got to talk about that too. I did have a update. I've already updated the Patreon on this. This is actually a good time to bring it up. Well, actually, we'll jump into that after, because I don't really have a show and tell thing for tonight. I'll jump into that after we'll do the categories here for the Trivial Pursuit, because it'll take a little bit of time. So again, we got the late 90s Trivial Pursuit Tiger Electronics thing. We'll do a few questions on here to kind of wrap up for the show tonight. I know it's already almost 11 o'clock on the East Coast, so we're not going to go too much longer here tonight. But if you want to stick around for some trivia, or if you have any other questions about the racing this weekend, feel free to certainly ask in the chat here, and we'll go from there. So again, the categories for the trivia tonight are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those are your categories. Once again, they are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. So go ahead and mention in the chat which category you'd like, and so we'll have some more. Whoop, hang on. There we go. Okay, so I'll set that aside here for just a moment. Let me check also the Twitter feed. Do we have any updates on inspection? Let's see. All right. Let's see. Looking here, getting that pulled up. Tyler Reddick, we won. I don't know how to explain it in a video here posted on Pockrace's page. Yeah, I don't see a call on inspection. So Kyle Busch still unofficially listed as your last place finisher with the wreck there. Actually, it looked like much lower attrition when you actually look at the race results, but much more of a tricky situation there. I see the videos Dustin Long posted on the comments from Goodyear's Greg Stucker. I haven't heard that yet. Given the audio issues I've already had on setting up the show tonight, I'm not going to try playing it here because I'm probably, knowing this thing tonight, I don't know what's going on. I don't want to blow anybody's ears out or anything like that. But we'll kind of go from there. So on that note, I want to kind of talk about the rise of the field fillers with Stanton Barrett. So I'm very pleased to say that I actually got in a conversation with Stanton Barrett on the next episode there. I anticipated there were going to be many suggestions he'd have, because he's had such, I can't overstate this, and it probably doesn't come to any surprise. He's had like such a busy lifestyle there. In fact, he's really busy these next few weeks. Getting ready to race. It looks like a sports car race. He was kind of posting stuff on his Facebook page about running some sports cars and whatnot there. I don't know if he's going to run the Roval in another couple weeks there. I know he has a long-standing relationship with Rick Ware that they've been working together for years. But he talked to me and he told me about a lot of other moments that were not in my script. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like in 20 minutes, we probably could have made a video just on the conversation that we had. We spoke last week there. So he was very clear. He told me about a lot of these stories. It's like, oh, well, we should go into this. We should go into that. And I was like, wow, it's like, well, it was very clear to me that what he was describing was way better than what I had already written so far. And I felt like, I'd used a lot of the same approaches that I've done to past episode in Rise of the Field Fillers and other series really too. Kind of looking at a lot of publicly available sources, newspapers, archives on J-Ski, things of that nature. And of course the old video clips from the 2004 season. In our discussion though, I think what we're going to do with his story is steer it more towards the driver profile series. And I think that's going to be much better because it was already kind of going that direction because two big reasons. One reason was I had already kind of included a description of his father, Stan Barrett, who had a very similar racing career of his own, was a stuntman himself, was competing in Winston Cup back in the early 1980s and had a career of his own. So it almost kind of became kind of a 2-in-1 at that point. I know we've talked a little bit about relatives of drivers in past episodes of the Field Fillers. Certainly Andy Belmont's family and Carl Long's family have come up and at the same breath there. But I think in this case here, it's going to fit much better in this because, and the other part of it too is, the Field Filler angle, Stanton's not really a big fan of that at all. And I think that was a good opening when I brought that up. He was bringing, I was like, whoa, hang on. It's like, I did this, I did that, I was working with this. And it's like, whoa, okay, cool. So it kind of opened him up. It was a great icebreaker, I'll say that. And we got a lot of really interesting information about, things from his career. And we're going to follow up on that in a couple weeks and, really go into that a bit more. So what does this mean for the video? Again, it's going to be a little while, unfortunately, but I am confident that what comes out on the other end of this is going to be way better than what I had already had together and sent over to Stanton there earlier. So I appreciate him taking the time. I know he's a very busy individual. I'm just kind of working with his schedule. I think the best thing I could do at this point, especially since it's already been something that's kind of been on the back burner throughout this year, is to just not set a clear, time frame on that and just kind of get that going there at the same time. So I apologize for those of you that are big fans of Rise of the Field Fillers. I know it's the most popular series on the channel. But unfortunately, it is going to take a bit longer there, and it's going to be structured a little bit differently there too. So it is more likely going to be in the driver profile series. But again, the benefit of that is, while I don't think it's going to focus that much on 2004 like the Field Filler series is, I think it's going to have a more overall interesting story on both himself and the Barrett family, which has a lot of different facets to it. So sometimes this happens. Sometimes what happens sometimes with a lot of these projects, I guess even the Derek Cope project kind of started off like this too. Something that I felt like maybe could have been more of a short form project ends up becoming something much longer. And so that's going to be the case. So, since that's already getting moved back, and therefore the episode that I already planned to have after the Barrett episode, that one's going to still be a Field Fillers episode for reasons that'll be much clearer. So that one is going to be pushed back a bit too, because I think that one will make more. That one's kind of reliant on the Stanton Barrett episode itself. So wherever it pops up, I think that's going to make up more sense. So now I know what you're thinking, of course. It's like, okay, well, now we got an opening here. So what on earth is going to be coming up next on the channel? So the good news is, during all this year, where we're kind of getting the Field Filler series going back again since the Hermie Sadler video, I do have a massive project that I was originally waiting to release it after the Barrett one because I didn't want it to distract from the Stanton Barrett project, because I think it's going to take a whole lot of, it's going to just kind of do that. But I've kept it on the back burner and just kind of been writing it. I actually recorded the first part of it just last night along with NASCAR Man script. And this is going to, what the result of this has been is it's going to actually be a series of 3 videos that I think just recently has expanded to a 4th video. And the advantage with this is it's not going to be really reliant on interviews. The research is already completed. The script, 1/4 of it's already been recorded. I'm just going to kind of push through and just record the rest of it and start getting it together. This is going to be very different from Field Fillers. It's not really going to be on that. I'm reluctant to reveal. I'm trying to kind of hold my tongue. Well, I don't know how much. I've already kind of waded in a little too deep on this, but I've already told the people in Patreon. If you're already in the Patreon at patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock, you're aware what this project is because I posted a trailer for it months ago when I didn't know what the timeline was on this. So what we're going to do is it's going to be a follow-up on 3 Before February. We're going to be doing a sequel to that. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, well, what on earth is going to be a sequel to that? My original plan when I was getting the Stanton Barrett project together was I was thinking, it would be kind of interesting. Like I did a lot of videos on the 2000 season, but I kind of sprinkled them here and there. And I kind of did like one on 3 Before February, the safety aspect. And we did kind of Johnny Benson, and we talked about that. And we talked about, Jerry Nadeau. I mean, other drivers and stuff for that figure. So 2000 seasons come up a lot. And I'm thinking, okay, well, how about what we do is let's bring together that entire, almost like a cinematic universe, I guess, in video parlance there. Let's bring all that together and really kind of understand that season outside, linking all that stuff together and kind of make that like just some larger project. And my original thought was, okay, we'll do it and we'll start from like when that silly season stories began and kind of dump it off in 2001. Then when I did that, it kind of went into Speed Weeks 2001. And then when it did that, it went into the 2001 Daytona 500. And when I did that, it went into Rockingham after the 2001 Daytona 500. So the result is I now have a massive script that is pretty much those are going to be the 4 parts. That it's going to be kind of the 2000 season in a bit of a review, not really a race by race thing, but kind of things that were kind of going on behind the scenes that kind of set up to 2001, through that into the 2001 Daytona 500, and then bringing that up there. So that is going to be the project there. I guess there's really no reason to keep it secret at this point because people in the Patreon know about it and they've seen the trailer for it. Of course, when I post the trailer for this, it's going to be coming up there. And I owe you guys an explanation on it too, especially if I'm going to push the Stanton Barrett thing further down. So actually, that's going to be it. So the working title of this video is called 500 Days. The reason for that is it's going to be focusing again on kind of the 500 days that led in, that kind of covered that whole time period there. Really between what happened in the 2000 season, going into the 2001 Speed Weeks, and so forth there. So hey, so those of you staying later on the show, you get a little bit of bonus content on that. But that's what's going to be kind of the focus there. So it's going to be not just the silly season, but a review of Speed Weeks 2001, a review of the 2001 Daytona 500, and then after that, a review of the events leading into Rockingham 2001. And there's a possibility that maybe it keeps going after that. We'll probably know at that point. So it's going to be, right now it's 4 parts. It's 4 very long parts. The first part turned out to be much longer than I thought it was going to be. And it's going to be pretty big. So definitely stay tuned on that. We're going to have a lot more information on that. But I'm very pleased to say, since again, it's not really going to have interviews in it, due to the subject matter, I think it's kind of a story of like a lot of these rumors at the same time too. So luckily a lot of that's already committed to print. So I think in terms of making sure the story is expressed as correctly as possible, but also as detailed as possible, I think that's been accomplished. So that's going to be up there very soon. I'm not ready to post the trailer yet, because I want to post that when the project is pretty much set to be released. I want to kind of get it at that point. So I don't mind kind of filtering it out here in the meantime. I might put some teasers on social media here in the meantime, just to kind of keep people interested, especially in all that. So, and what I also plan is like when I would like to release certainly the first 3 parts together and have them all available at the same time for those of you that are in the Patreon. Anybody $5 and up, have them up there. Because what I'd like to do is I'd like to release them. I'd like to do a premiere of parts 1, 2, and 3 on consecutive weeks and have that. So I think this is going to be very big. And I've bought licenses to 3 different songs. There's a very talented individual online here. I don't feel like giving that away yet, actually, because he's got really good stuff. But I've bought some licenses to some songs to put in the video there. I mean, good backtrack music that kind of sets the tone of it very well. And very excited about it. And actually, I was almost thinking of jumping this ahead of Barrett's video anyway, because I've just been playing it kind of in the car and kind of thinking about how I want to kind of approach it. So I think this will work out for the best. So I don't know exactly how much longer it's going to take. I'd love to have it done before the end of the season. I don't know exactly if that's going to be the situation, but we're making pretty good progress. I think I'll probably have the scripts to the other. I need to revise the script for the Rockingham part. I just finished that this week. The first draft of it, that definitely needs to be tightened up. But the first 3 parts, I think those are ready to go. So I should at least get those up there. And it's going to be a very big project on that. And then given, of course, what happened in the 2001 Daytona 500, it's going to be the thing. My goal with it, very similar to 3 Before February, is it's not going to be necessarily the Dale Earnhardt video. I know it's very easy to certainly do that. That's certainly been done. Obviously, blink of an eye that Michael Waltrip has done. Obviously, the day that Speed Channel or FS1 did. Fantastic documentaries. I cannot improve on those. I cannot. What I feel like I can do is really what I think is important with this particular project is to bring people back to that time period in 2001 and kind of understand everything that was going on around that race and everything that kind of led up to it, and kind of bringing in my own memories of it. It's not going to be as personalized as Until Lap 11 was for the Vegas thing. It's not going to take that approach. It's going to be much more closer to 3 Before February in terms of tone. But that's going to be really the plan there. So that's going to be the next big project on there. And again, big thanks to those of you in the Patreon. Really helped being able to, that I could kind of commit more time to this. And I think this is, again, looking at things positively with the Stanton Barrett thing getting moved back, I think this is a great opportunity to now put this forward. So I'm very excited about getting that going. I have a trailer for both. I have 2 trailers actually set up already. And I'm trying to get some other graphics together to kind of get that set up here. So, so we'll put that out there. We'll have so much more here on the YouTube channel, and definitely for people in the Patreon there as well, coming up here. So, stay tuned for that. So anyway, I wasn't originally planning on announcing that tonight, but there's really no reason to wait. And I don't want to just say, oh, hey, I don't have this. This is not going to happen right away, but I got something really cool coming up. You guys, I owe you guys more information than that. So I certainly want to make sure you guys are more aware of what's going on, especially since it's already been released to the Patreon. I want to make sure they had that information earlier, and I've already posted all that, and so they've already been aware. So I don't mind bringing everybody else in on that at the same time too. So so that's kind of where we are right now. So we'll do some trivia questions here to wrap up for tonight. We got official, no issues on inspection. Okay, good. So we got that. That's good to see. So we'll see that. We'll go ahead and read that off here. We'll pull up Pockrass's page. There it is. 7 minutes ago, according to Bob Pockrass. Oh, I see they talked to NASCAR Senior Vice President Scott Miller. I need to check out that too. I got a couple videos I got to definitely watch here after we wrap up tonight. So we'll see that. Tech Complete, no issues. Reddick is the winner. That is the tweet from Bob Pockrass. So again, congratulations to Reddick for his 3rd career win, his first on a Cup Series oval. And the first or second last place finish this year for Kyle Busch. I believe it's actually his 10th of Kyle Busch's career, which kind of puts him higher up in that list there too. So we'll kind of see how things were going to be coming up there too. So we'll jump in. So which category, let's see, which one do we have on the most votes here? Watson Roadster mentioning DK Ulrich's interview on the Scene Vault podcast. Yes. Oh my gosh. If you guys haven't seen that, you need to see that. Oh, that guy, that guy there's a book in that one. And it sounds like he's already talking with somebody. It's not me, unfortunately, but he's got some fantastic stories. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. If you haven't listened to DK Ulrich's thing, listen to it. I haven't listened to the version that's on the Scene Vault podcast, but definitely the one on YouTube. Was thoroughly entertaining. I was listening to that on the ride to work there, and it was very good. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. Let's see. Drivers 2, 3. I see 3 for wild card. Let's see. I believe the sidewalls are. Not sure. Let's see. So, video encyclopedia. Yep, there we go. Tech Complete. Yeah, where are we on this? We'll just do some driver questions here to kind of wrap up. Michael Jensen, oh, thank you for the comment there. I guess you've seen this the video there. Scott Miller said they didn't know Byron spun Hamlin until they went green. They were focused on the caution. Sounds like when it was raining in Loudon and they didn't know because of the tinted windows. Okay, well, yeah, there you go. So at least we have an explanation on that. Because it seemed pretty clear as day in the video that NASCAR themselves posted. But if they just weren't aware, they just focused on the caution, at least they're admitting it. So, okay. So things happen. Things slip through the cracks. We've seen both sides of this all year. I mean, certainly the Loudon situation. And then you go back to Daytona with the rain there, too. But that would be it. Beast of Metal, thank you for keeping the totals there, too. Wild card 4. Okay. We'll do some both. I said we were going to do drivers, but we'll do some wild card here, too, since that category was up there. So we'll do that. So we'll do a couple for drivers and a couple for wild card, since those are the top couple categories. So first question here. All right, whose 1995 comeback won him the Mildred Babe Didrikson Zacharias Courage Award? Well, there's a mouthful. I'm sure I butchered that name. Whose 1995 comeback won him the Mildred Babe Didrikson Zacharias Courage Award? Yeah, Watson Roadster. Yeah, you definitely saw it there for sure. Yeah, that was a good part of it for sure. Whose 1995 comeback won him the Mildred Babe Didrikson Zacharias Courage Award? I've seen the comments about Ty Gibbs and the pit stop. I didn't see that. I saw somebody had a loose wheel and backed up into their stall. I think it was Landon Castle. It was one of the Spire cars. Is either Castle or LaJoy. But he had like the second stall there. But as to Gibbs, I don't have any awareness of that. All right, so we got several guesses for Ernie Irvan. We're going to read it one more time. Whose 1995 comeback won him the Mildred Babe Didrikson Zacharias Courage Award? The answer is indeed Ernie Irvan's. Correct. Ernie Irvan. We actually ended up accidentally teasing that earlier, too, so there you go. Ernie Irvan is the correct answer. All righty, here we go. Next question, folks. What driver is said to have coined phrases like flat out and belly to the ground? What driver is said to have coined phrases like flat out, in quotes, and, quote, belly to the ground? Who coined those phrases? The Gibbs Pit Road video. Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet. I need to see that. I'm glad that there's, again, those onboard, I assume it's the onboard camera that they showed. Is that it? Because that's got to be such a gift that keeps giving here on that. So there's definitely that. What driver is said to have coined phrases like flat out and belly to the ground? You almost knocked Ty Dillon into pit crew members. Oh my goodness. I definitely got to see that. I'm sure I'll turn that up there too, but I'll check that out after the show here tonight. Oh, is the broadcast shot? Okay. Well, either way, I'll have to look it up. What driver is said to have coined phrases like flat out and belly to the ground? We got guesses for Curtis Turner, AJ Foyt, Peyton Manning, Fireball Roberts, Rusty Wallace, Buddy Baker. Yeah, Bills lost today, but that's all right. I'm taking it a lot better than the offensive coordinator did in that one video. But, yeah, I'm glad it, again, at least you don't have to worry about the undefeated season. I think that's good. My coworker keeps trying to jinx the Bills every week. He says, oh, you guys are going to win. You guys are going to win easy. It's like, don't say that. It never comes easy. Never comes easy for the Bills. But there you go. What driver is said to have coined phrases like flat out and belly to the ground? Herb Teague, Smokey Eunuch. Alrighty, here we go. The answer is Joe Weatherly. Joe Weatherly is the credited one. Did anybody get that? I don't think anybody got that. Everybody got the Ernie Irvan one. Joe Weatherly. I mean, it could be any of these. I could see AJ Foyt or Curtis Turner, Rusty Wallace. Yeah. Who knows? But yeah, it was a close game. Yes, there you go. Joe Weatherly is the correct answer. All right, let's move to wild card. We'll do a couple from here to kind of. Oh, here we go. Here's an interesting one. Here we go. So keep in mind, these are late 90s questions again. For those of you who are new here, we still got 60 people in the chat. Whose fan club sends out folding frisbees to those who send in the membership fee? Whose fan club sends out folding frisbees to those who send in the membership fee? Fan clubs are a lot of fun. Like I'm trying to structure that with the Patreon. Like actually, again, well, if you forgive the plug again, that's a perfect transition for it. Like I try to, one thing I really need to catch up on, I haven't done a new membership newsletter since before the season started, so I got to get on that. As things go right now, I'm probably going to do it right after the season wraps up and distribute that out. So I like to send out little perks in the mail there. Still had the opportunity with that. We actually had a couple new people join here this week, so big thanks to them on that. But yeah, I like to kind of bring things back to kind of the old school fan club thing, because that was something I enjoyed as a kid. You remember the Jerry Nadeau video? You actually see a lot of the materials I got from being in the Nadeau fan club from 99 through 2004. And they would send out the membership cards and the signed hero cards and all that great stuff. I mean, I assume they still have those in some form, but I don't know if they're nearly as big as they used to be back in the late 90s. I think Joey Logano has one. But I'm not sure about beyond that. But I always thought that was really cool. And I think it's always such a nice personal thing. You could literally have like a card you carry in your wallet that shows that you're like a fan of this guy or something. And it was always like for like a nominal fee. It was like $10 or something. It came up in the JD McDuffie thing too. I mean, it used to be for them back then. So that was really cool. Last Bro was actually in the Dale Earnhardt fan club in 1999. And when you were in Club E, it was called. They actually sent you like a pretty big box coming into that year. They give you like a I don't know, coffee cup with the Earnhardt signature and stuff on it. Really cool stuff. If drivers haven't got back into that yet, that's something. Definitely add that to the list of things that need to make a comeback for sure. Because I think that really I know you have social media, so maybe something like a newsletter, doesn't really have as much importance to it. But I think people like having that personal touch. I always did. It always made my day. So that's why I still have them in a box, more than 2 decades later. That's always a great thing. Yeah, I'm still going. My goodness, where are we up to? Hour and a half? Okay, yeah. Let's see here. Del McCowart, good guess. There you go. Let me read the Frisbees. Yeah, what was that again? I actually don't know the answer to this one. I don't think Last Bro got a Frisbee with his. So I don't think it's Earnhardt, unless it was a different year, because his was 1999. I remember that because it was the 25th anniversary of them having Goodwrench. That's when he had like the silver deck lid on the car. But there was that too. Whose fan club sends out folding frisbees to those who send in the membership fee? Del McCowart would be a great one for that too. But there you go. Ricky Rudd, Jack Sprague, Tim Richmond, Mark Martin. Mark Martin because fitness. Good guess, Tank Slapper. Join Ross's fan club for a watermelon seed. There you go. Yeah, exactly. Like Loot Crate. Exactly, Irvin. Yeah, perfect. Like, because especially, now, I mean, you can have like merch that's like maybe a bit cheaper, but you can send like a box of it. Like it'll be like a koozie or stickers. People love stickers. I mean, heck, I still have a lot of those that I haven't used because I don't want to, use them on that. By the way, I sold my last Buddy Arrington sticker that I reprinted from the original this week. I was very floored on that. And actually somebody sent a great picture. They put it on the back of their, they actually had what looked to be a 78 Dodge Magnum and had that sticker on the back. So currently those are out of stock, but if anybody wants one still, I can order some more and put that back at the eBay store there. So haven't got any other requests up for it yet. But if that picks up again, that's always out there. I'd like to definitely put that out there because people seem to really enjoy those, especially after the Arrington video. I'm very pleased that video went as well as it did for that. So that's for sure. So here we go. Let's not break the tension anymore. Whose fan club sends out folding frisbees to those who send in a membership fee? The answer is Dale Earnhardt. Dale Earnhardt is the correct answer. Wow. Well, yeah, Last Bro did not. I'll have to ask him. I don't think he got a folding frisbee. Not in 99. This must have been made in 98. So that must have been, yeah, it says it was 98. So maybe 97, 98 he had the folding frisbees. So that would be Earnhardt. How about that? I don't know. I haven't seen any of those on that. Excuse me. at the same time. Alrighty. I hadn't opened this, but I'm going to have to. Alrighty. Okay. Let's see. Huh. Okay, here we go. Here's another good advertising question here for you. Yeah, Dale Earnhardt with the folding frisbees in the fan club things. That's kind of surprising. All right, here we go. Next question in the wild card category. Whose ad read, quote, "Racing cars at 188 miles per hour used to turn my hair gray until just for men"? That's actually the question. I'll read that again here. Whose ad read, "Racing cars at 188 miles per hour used to turn my hair gray until just for men"? Which driver? Again, late 90s driver. So that's the question on that. Yeah, didn't take Earnhardt for a Frisbee guy. Yeah, I wouldn't think so either. I mean, I figure if it was a black Frisbee, it'd be kind of hard to find, too. Wouldn't you want a bright colored one? Like, I figured Jeff Gordon was going to be my guess. Like, I figured it would be rainbow colored, and that would look really cool. You can, like, swirl it in there. That'd be pretty awesome. Yeah, I guess not. But maybe it's a foldable Frisbee. So maybe it's just literally like a piece of paper. Like, I don't know what the technology was like at the time, if you could have a foldable plastic Frisbee. But, yeah, there you go. Oh, gosh. I see the RD Fox, you guessed Derek Cope on this question. You know, I still haven't asked Derek about that ship modeling question from last week. I got to do that. It just slipped my mind this week. I got to text Derek about that. Because, yeah, that came up on last week's show. For those of you who weren't here on this, the last question we had on last week's show said that there's a driver in the series that builds model ships in his spare time. I think was it model ships or was it like radio-controlled ships? It was one or the other. But it said that it was Derek Cope, and I'd never heard that. That's never come up in any of my interviews. And I don't know if it's a hobby he still does. Maybe it was something he did back then and not now, as was guessed on that. I need to follow up on that. I have not done that yet. I'll try to remember to do that, and we can follow up on that on our next show here for Talladega. So we'll see on that. Let me read the question again here. Whose ad read, racing cars at 188 miles per hour used to turn my hair gray until just for men? Yeah, hair. I remember that. Alrighty, here we go. We got guesses for Harry Gant, Bill Elliott, Labonte, Marcus, Cope, Jarrett, Marlin. The cloth was something in the rim to give it some rigidity. Okay, yeah. Okay, like the bendable ones, like you can stick it in your pocket or something. Okay. That's starting to sound familiar. Model ships, RD Fox. Yeah, okay. Model ships. Yeah, I got to follow up with him on that for sure. Alicia will probably tell me if I didn't hear from Derek. But yeah, I got to text him this week and find out. I'm not going to text him tonight. He's going to be like, what the heck? What are you texting me at 11 o'clock about model ships for? Although, you know, he really is such a laid back guy. Like, you know, he probably would answer at this time, but I think he'd be more concerned than anything. I don't want to do that. So here we go. Whose ad read, "Racing cars at 188 miles per hour used to turn my hair gray until just for men"? The answer is DW, Darrell Waltrip. Darrell Waltrip is the correct answer. I don't think anybody guessed that. Dave Marcus, Cope, and Jarrett, these are good guesses. Darrell Waltrip is correct. It sounds like something he'd say, doesn't it? Darrell Waltrip. Good question on here. Alrighty, so we'll do one more. Wild card question, and we'll wrap up for tonight. So we'll do that. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I know it was a little crazy tonight. We didn't have the opening. I don't know if I'm going to try to play the opening at the end of the show here because I couldn't get it to hear. Like, I had it queued up, and I swear it just wouldn't play it. Like, I was playing it and I couldn't hear it. And before it's because I didn't turn the knob up, but I turned the knob up and it didn't do it. So it's like, okay, something's sideways. I did just upgrade to Windows 11 this week, so it's probably that problem. I think that's it, but we'll see. Anyway, what car? Last question for the night. Last question here, folks. Under the wild card category, what car was considered to be the cousin of the Plymouth Superbird? What car was considered to be the cousin of the Plymouth Superbird? Send Derek a ship model kit for Christmas. I like that idea, 611 Hornets. That's a great idea. I like that. Yeah, the ad's probably on YouTube. Probably is. Probably is. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. What car was considered to be the cousin of the Plymouth Superbird? All right, hang on. Let's see. Dude. I'll trip just for men. Okay, I typed in Darrell Waltrip just for men, and it didn't come up right away. Nope. I typed it in, and the stream just came up instead. Okay. If anybody finds it, though, definitely let me know. But that'll be definitely the other one. What car was considered to be the cousin of the Plymouth Superbird is the question. Hit that soundboard. Yeah, exactly. I don't even know if that's going to work tonight. I don't know what's going on. This thing's been really reliable so far, and I could hear this. There's no problem here, but it's the opening that's not playing. So, yeah, we'll do that. What I'll probably do is I'll play the opening at the end of the show just to see if it works. But I don't know why I can't hear it. So it might just, at worst, there's going to be like a minute where you don't hear anything, but it'll still do like the visuals of it. So we'll try that just to make sure it's working. I mean, we got to just figure it out for Talladega. So that'll be the plan. So again, reading the last question for tonight. What car was considered to be the cousin of the Plymouth Superbird? The answer is the Dodge Daytona. A lot of you got that. Dodge Daytona is the correct answer. There you go. Tank Slapper, I think you were the first one on that one. Jacob Bass, Andrew Bremner, RD Fox 76. A lot of you got it there. The Dodge Charger Daytona. So that is the last question. Yeah, the stream came up. Our Google is listening. Yeah, exactly. They heard that this was being discussed, and that was a pretty quick update. I haven't even finished the video yet. So that'll do it for the show tonight, folks. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I know things are a little bit different tonight. But if you're interested in more content, definitely check out my Twitter feed at Last Car on Brock. patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock. Or, of course, any other videos on this YouTube channel. Our next show is going to be next Sunday after the Super Speedway weekend, White Knuckle weekend at Talladega. It's going to be the Truck Series and Xfinity Series on Saturday, and, of course, the Cup Series on Sunday. Our show will be about 15 minutes after the Cup race is concluded next Sunday, and we'll talk about that. Oh, Bowser Jr. XD, you got your margins of victory on here. Thank you very much. Cup margin 1.19 seconds, the 1,686th. The Xfinity margin was 1.238 seconds, and that's the 1,719th. Thank you very much, Bowser. Definitely thank you for tuning in as well. So have a great week, folks. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll be back next week on the show. So let's see if this intro works. Again, I apologize if it's quiet or too loud, but we're going to find out. So here we go. 3, 2, 1.